Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Toner. I'm a marketer at HubSpot, and I'm so excited to have you all join myself and our guest presenters, who I'll introduce in just a minute on today's webinar, where we're going to learn how to go from 0 to 80,000 engaged Twitter followers with tips that you can apply to your business. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. All the lines are muted, so if you use the chat panel for any technical issues, we'll help you out there. But if you have questions for our presenters, we will get them answered at the end of the webinar, and you can ask your questions on Twitter using the hashtag Hubmasters. If we don't get to your questions, we'll try our best to get them answered over on Twitter after the webinar. And we will be recording today's webinar, so we'll send that out to you along with the slides later on this afternoon. So now I want to introduce you to our awesome presenters. Leela is the founder of Comms Access, which is formerly known as Socialable, and highly regarded on the world speaker circuit. She was listed in Forbes as a social media power influencer, and she is one of the most dynamic personalities in the social media market. Brian Lavery is joining us from Twitter. He is the partnership manager over there and works with partners like HubSpot to reach small and medium-sized businesses across EMEA. Hey guys.
Hi, great to be here.
Hi, really excited to be here too.
Hey Leela. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Leela to get us started off.
Thanks, Lisa, and great to be here with you all. Just to quickly say, I've had a little bit of a tickly cough, so I may have to have the odd sip of water. But without further ado, let's crack on. Now, Twitter is one of the most powerful tools for businesses. There clearly are many, many benefits, from brand awareness to being able to listen to what people are saying about your company or service, or indeed your competitors. It's a great way to learn and connect with like-minded people, and I've met so many amazing people over the years that I'm fortunate enough to meet online and then take into the real world. In fact, my business partner and co-founder of Communications Access, Dan Purvis, who you should definitely follow at Dan Purvis, is someone I met, in fact, on Twitter around 4 years ago. Now, more importantly, or equally as importantly, I should say, we've also acquired clients from using Twitter effectively too. So it's a great business development tool if used right. Back in January, we wrote an article on 21 of the best video tools. Now, for this post, we had to research and learn how to use around 100 of the different video tools. We then listed our favorites and the ones that we felt our readers would get the most value from. Now, not only did we list the tools, but we also took the time to review each one in more detail so that we could then help our audience choose the best tool for them. Once we'd published the article and shared it across our networks, we also then sent a tweet out to each of the companies letting them know about the article and that we had featured them in it. Now, it's worth noting that beforehand, we actually had no prior relationship with any of them, and the tools we reviewed were based on our honest feedback. We, of course, wanted to ensure that the post was authentic as possible. Now, as a result, one of the tools, and I may be slightly biased because they were actually one of our favorites, was GoAnimate. GoAnimate is an amazing video animation tool where you can make professional animated videos and animated infographics in literally only a few minutes. Well, they saw our tweet, read the post, got in touch to thank us, and the rest, well, as they say, is history. It really is a great tool where you can literally do it yourself, and is based on a low-budget subscription model, so it's perfect for SMEs. And they also have around 9 million users too. So simply from tweeting out to them and then directing them to our article, not only did they share it to their networks, but it also started a relationship from proactive engagement and led them to being one of our clients. So it's a great example of how Twitter, you can generate leads and business as well as so much more. So as we can see here, this is my Twitter handle. So you'll see here a few little things. So I currently have over 82,000 followers. I don't actually follow everyone back. And the truth is there's a lot of debate about whether you should follow people back for the sake of it. And we probably don't actually have enough time to go into that today, but that's for another day to discuss on. But I wanted to talk you through how to make the most of the bio space that you have. Now, as you can see from my profile, I've chosen to go down the keyword road to optimize my profile. I've also used hashtags as well as the keywords, and this really helps others find you organically as well. Now, alternatively, you could think about posting a descriptive profile. So, for example, Oreo cookies, they use a descriptive bio. Now, they, however, have a very, very large and recognizable brand, so this works particularly well for them. And if you're smaller and keen to get more followers, you may find it more effective to use keywords in your bio space. Also, one thing to really point out is to think about and consider the URL that you use. Where do you actually want to direct people back to? It may sound obvious, but not everyone wants to direct traffic back to their website. Perhaps you've got an event coming up or an offer with a separate landing page, or you want to grow your Facebook page and send people back there. Now, whilst many people want to have a large following, it's more important to actually have an engaged following that is loyal and that communicates with you and is happy to share your tweets or content with their audience. Now, it goes without saying that it needs to be as targeted as possible, and you'll probably hear me say the word targeted so many times throughout this webinar today. But this is where you will really see the real value and get the benefits from using Twitter. But if you want loyalty, you've got to be engaging and you've got to be proactive. And if you broadcast a load of content or opinions and then, just sit back and expect followers to flock you, then you're going to be disappointed. And yes, this does sound obvious. Well, I think it is, but, too many individuals and brands who really should know better, still take this approach. You won't build a loyal, engaged and growing digital community if you do this.
So, from a Twitter perspective, the statistic that you see on the screen here, about a 90% retention rate over 6 months, relates to followers that you acquire through organic and promoted Twitter activity, if you're running a Twitter ads campaign. And it's quite a significant one because it means you have a real opportunity with that audience that you build. With every new follower who you gain through your activity on Twitter, you've got a window of time through which you can prove themselves to them, and it's quite long. And if you do a good job with all the activities that Leela has been mentioning, and some of the tips that we're going to cover in the material to come, then you should be able to do much better than that 90% retention rate over 6 months as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're still in contact with people that I've been tweeting with for nearly 3-4 years. So absolutely, yeah, no, that's perfectly right. So the next slide it's all about engagement. Now these numbers here are an overview of around 18 or so days from February. It was at a time when we were testing sending out more tweets because we wanted to know what the impact would have on it, whether it would turn people off or, they would embrace it. And as you can see from the numbers, it actually worked hugely successful for us. Now, it's worth noting here that none of the tweets were salesy, and in fact, that is something that we have always shied away from, and instead we try to give as much value as possible. Now, what actually happened was that we had a very large spike in engagement. We generated a lot of replies, a lot of retweets, a lot of mentions, and people favoriting our tweets as well. And obviously the additional benefits was we would be able to join and network with new people, joining new conversations, and as well as we also generated more traffic back to our website as well.
So again, from a Twitter small business perspective, these numbers are incredibly impressive. And looking at Leela's profile page, 82,000 followers. I can see some of the tweets coming in on the hashtag now of people saying, oh, I've only got 78,000 followers to go with a smiley face. And you should think about, remember, while we're learning a ton from Leela today, there might be a level that's right for your business. So look out to see competitors, industry leaders, and others who are good comparators for your company to figure out what the right level of aspiration should be for your Twitter activity. 80,000 followers is right for Leela, or maybe even more, but she's in a particular space, so don't feel too daunted by some of the numbers that we're looking at here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, if you're in a certain sector, as you said, Brian, you only need a few of the right followers. And, you know, going back to the whole social media and Twitter and being targeted, it is about having as many targeted people as possible. You need to think about who you're trying to connect with, what is their reach as well, how engaged and how responsive are they. You know, just think about the old, you know, the age-old business tenet of know your customer. Your audience is your customer. So, you know, serve them well, get to know them, learn what their interests and needs are, and if you don't, then don't expect to get too many followers. And as we mentioned earlier, by having a loyal and responsive Twitter following, you are much, much more likely to have better results, and quality versus quantity will always win. Now, as we've spoken about, you know, growing a following, gaining a following that is engaged and loyal does take time. I started using Twitter in July 2008, so it's actually my anniversary, so happy anniversary to me, and, you know, have always had and continue to have a very, very strategic plan. I've built this following by providing great content that offers huge value and makes people want to share it. And we constantly and continually test everything. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later on in today's webinar, about, you know, the value of A/B testing. And that's also a key part in helping with the growth. You have to experiment, you have to learn, you have to measure, you have to adapt, and then obviously you have to repeat it. And for me, it's really about old school networking in the real-time digital world. And as, in fact, my following has grown, the more I have engaged. You know, guest blogging opportunities have grown as a result, and the more I've networked and spoken at events, as well as being published in magazines and websites, you know, all of these things have contributed to the growth. So not only does it take time, but it also takes a lot of hard work, and ultimately, like everything, you get in what you put out. Now, some people are perhaps a little bit frustrated or even a little bit skeptical, but we really need to get back to basics. And for us, you need to put content at the heart of your strategy and use Twitter to kick off conversations. This, in turn, will help amplify the reach of that conversation, and therefore you'll be able to facilitate and engage with much more people. So let's dive into this a little bit more. So, first things first, and I've said, and I will probably repeat, it really does take time and a lot of hard work. You cannot just rely on following people and play the numbers game. You know, there's so much more to it than that, particularly if you actually want to get results from your Twitter. You need to get back to basics. You need to be making sure that your website is working as well as it can. There really is no point in driving traffic back from Twitter to your website if it then lets you down and doesn't convert. So you need to ensure that your website has clear calls to action. And I liken this to a puppet show. So you're pulling the strings and you're directing people where you want them to go. And it is so much easier converting existing traffic than having to constantly get new traffic all the time. And little things like testing your share buttons. We've recently experimented and you know, frequently changed our sharing buttons. And, you know, sometimes you have to forget vanity. The less sexy and the less pretty ones actually resulted in a much more dramatic increase in our shares. And you can test with where you position them as well as which actual plugin you use as well. But always do make sure that you have your settings set up correctly. You know, frustratingly, we're often seeing too too many websites where we want to share their content and companies aren't making the most of linking back to their Twitter handle where it says via, at, and then the name. And this really is such a simple thing to do and is often, sadly overlooked. And, if you're not tracking, if you're not measuring, and to put this quite bluntly, there really is no point. You're blindly using Twitter. You have no idea of whether it's working or what's not working or how you can improve things. So whilst this isn't as much fun or as exciting perhaps, for me, it really is the most important part. Social media is constantly evolving, it's constantly changing, and you therefore need to measure what's working for you. You need to aspire to continuous improvement, and you need to be able to stay up to date so that you can maximize your return on investment.
And there are also a number of tools that Twitter has introduced recently that should make some of these tasks easier. I completely would like to emphasize all 3 points that Leela has made here about setting realistic expectations for yourself, and then also figuring out how Twitter works as part of your other marketing content and supports it, and that there's a two-way system operating there. And then to make it easy for yourself to study and track your performance over time. We're going to talk about some tools, some third-party tools that you can use to do that, but there is also an online conversion tracking tool within the Twitter advertising dashboard. If you were set up as a Twitter advertiser, there is a system which will tell you exactly how many of your tweets have driven traffic through to your website and gives you statistics on that type of activity. We also have the sharing buttons that Leela mentions are at dev.twitter.com. That's D-E-V for developer, dev.twitter.com, to make it easy for people to follow you and to share your content straight from your website and without leaving your website. So if you have good sticky content online, you can encourage your visitors to your website to spread that for you on Twitter and engage with you on Twitter without actually leaving your website itself.
No, thanks, Brian. No, that really leads nicely, actually, in making it as easy as possible for people to find and connect with you on Twitter. So, think about, again, and these sound really obvious, posting your Twitter handle and your email signatures in forums where it allows you to. And, of course, your business card, the amount of networking events I go to, and I'm always surprised when people I get their business card and there's no Twitter handle on there. So, do take the time to do that. And also, cross-promote where you can. So, share your Twitter profile on your Facebook and Pinterest and LinkedIn, etc. And, cross-promotion works really, really well. So, just by posting an update on Facebook where you simply ask, are you following us on Twitter? Come and connect with us and say hi, vice versa, work really, really well. And again, it's pretty obvious to have it on your website and blog, but think about if you're doing any presentation decks or any other offline marketing materials that you create, of sharing it there too. Now, one tactic I wanted to share with you today, and that's worked really well for me, is engaging and working with key influencers in my space. And don't be afraid to approach and ask influential people in your industry niche. For some strange reason, a lot of UK people have a fear of asking for things. But it's actually rare that people will say no. I mean, for example, I'm often asked by charities to share their content and will always happily do so. And Twitter is by far the easiest and the quickest and can be the most effective way to connect with people that you couldn't normally get in front of. And sometimes it really is as simple as just, reaching out and asking them. It's also worthwhile investing in the time to find out who are the influential people, so who are the influential journalists or bloggers in your industry. But you also need to take the time to build and nurture a relationship with them. So whilst this can seem like perhaps a time-consuming task, the reality is that you'll get much, much better results than just asking them for a favour. They're much more likely to say yes if they've actually, if you've actually taken the time to get to know them a little. much better than sending out a cold, salesy tweet. And again, think about old school networking. The same principles apply here. And there's lots of tools available which can really help you save time. So it's really worthwhile leveraging tools like Twitterland, Littlebird, and Twitonomy. They can really dig deep into the metrics of the Twitter handle. And the more you know about them and who they're connected to, then the easier it can be for you to then connect with them. Now, it goes without saying as well that if you're looking for them to share your content, make sure the content provides value and that their followers will therefore like it as well. And, think about ways where you could incorporate them within your content too. So in the past, we've approached influencers in our niche, and we've actually asked them for a quote, which we've included. And this is a great way to connect. Gets you on their radar, and you're able to give something back as well. And more often than not, they will also then share the article to their own audience, which amplifies the reach and adds to the credibility of the article too. And if you're struggling to make contact with someone, it can be useful to look at their followers and see if there's someone there that you know or know of someone who does, and if you can get an intro that way. Ultimately, it does take time and sometimes a little bit of creativity and perseverance.
From my perspective, don't forget your customers too, and the audience that you are building up. When you're having good conversations, don't forget to retweet their content and to support some of the other good material that you'll see from the people who are reaching out to you and engaging with you. So this can work both ways. You want to reach out to the big influencers who can help give you a leg up, and then return the favor further downstream, and you might find more influencers in surprising places.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, another great way that we found which really increases our engagement on Twitter is by creating competitions and contests. And we found by doing that and using topical hashtags helped really spark interaction and help discovery, kind of like how we are using the Hubmasters hashtag today to get questions in for this webinar. So don't forget, any questions at all, please post the hashtag Hubmasters, which you can see in the slides as well. Now there's just so many great tools available which can help you manage the competition as well as help facilitate it too. We actually recently did a competition for a client of ours, Games Grabber. They're a social network for gamers. Now, their objective, not only did they want to increase their engagement and following across Twitter and Facebook, but they also wanted to increase their users and grow their list. So we decided to create a point system whereby if you tweeted about the competition, you got 2 points, or if you signed up as a user, you would then get 4 points. And each point represented an entry. And the more entries you had, the more likely you were to win. So as you can see, it was a real win-win situation because everyone likes free stuff. However, when creating competitions and contests, it does pay to take the time to plan and really think about what your objectives are. It's very, very easy to get excited that lots of people are entering, but you want to make sure it's the right people and make the prize as targeted as possible. So, for example, if you offer money or vouchers, it then can open up the competition to others that may, in fact, actually have no desire in your product and simply be a competition seeker. Now, this is great if you're looking to have a large number of followers, but it kind of negates the whole targeted following. They won't engage with you after the competition and could very well unfollow you, which defeats the object of the competition. So by having clear objectives, this will help in terms of the prize you offer and how it's promoted as well.
Personally, I love competitions on Twitter, and that's because they get such great engagement and such great resonance from Twitter users. Twitter users, this is a huge generalization, but Twitter users like to be in the know, they like to be ahead of the game, and when you have a competition for just on Twitter, that really makes your audience there, whether your followers and other people who see your content, feel that you're offering them something special and you're rewarding them for being your followers. So it's a great way to deepen that engagement.
Yeah, no, I'm a massive fan of competitions as well. And little things like, we did it recently for a client actually. They were very close to 900 followers, so we just sent a few tweets out, saying, oh, help us reach our milestone and we'll give you some free ice lollies, and things like that. And people love it. It's very well received. So it works very well. So, okay, I mentioned earlier about how it's crucial that you're testing and measuring your results. But before you do, you need to have a goal. So what are your objectives? What do you want that tweet or your Twitter to actually achieve? Is it clickbait? Is it traffic? Is it to sign up to a list? Is it to increase engagement, likes, followers? All these things need to be considered. And split testing your tweets is in fact actually very, very similar process to split testing emails or newsletters. Now the simplest way is to create 5 or 10 different tweets and test which headline generates more clicks or more email opt-ins. And you can do this by setting up individual trackable links for each one, or whatever it is your metric. So for example, if you're giving away a free report, you could test it and write the word free or simply omit that word. And you can also test different hashtags too, and that works very well. There really are many, many different variables that you can test. So you can test from the time of day or the evening so that you can work out your best performing time and also which is the best day for you as well. And again, the more research you do here on where your customers are located and online, then the easier it will be for you to reach out to them. And if you're posting tweets with images or videos and vines, you'll see that they typically receive more engagement shares than without. And particularly as Twitter is evolving and it's becoming so much more of a visual feast. So, although bear in mind, you may then need to split test the actual images as well. And also, test the type of tweets that you send as well. Do questions work well? How engaged and how responsive are people in responding to them? Now, as we all know, Twitter is an amazing platform to engage with your audience on and get real-time feedback. But there are an overwhelming amount and a lot of conversations happening on Twitter these days as the member growth and engagement has exploded. So I found that by using some helpful tools to manage my Twitter interactions can be much more efficient and effective. It's also worth noting here that, as we're being more and more inundated with tools, there literally is a plethora of them out there. On our blog, we actually have researched literally hundreds of them and have many articles and reviews. And in particular, our 101 Tweet-tastic Tools post provides a much greater insight on them. So please feel free to check them out after this webinar or connect with me and I can point you in the right direction there. So let's have a look at a few of the tools that I would recommend. Now, Manage Flitter is a great tool to really understand and dig in deep to your followers. It helps you understand who isn't following you back, and more importantly, it actually analyzes your followers and works out which ones haven't been active. Now, it's all very well having hundreds or thousands of followers, but the reality is, if they're not actually using Twitter or engaging on there, then they aren't going to be seeing your tweets. So therefore, by taking the time to understand your followers, you will have a much more effective result. Now, Social Oomph. This is currently, as far as I'm aware, the only tool where you can send recurring scheduled tweets out. Now, whilst this is a great time-saving tool, like any of them, they can be misused. So do be careful not to overuse it. And for best results, you really cannot beat real-time live engagement. Communit is a tool that helps you analyze your followers. It helps you give a much greater insight into the relationships that you actually have with them. It also can highlight who are your most engaged, who are your most loyal and supportive followers, as well as focusing on your top influencers. Now, social inbox from HubSpot, you can really get targeted and engaged with the people who matter most. The product has a really cool color coding system that clearly displays who are your customers, who are your leads, and who are your prospects, so you can reply accordingly. You can create what they call streams that monitor Twitter for anyone, as broad or as targeted as you like, mentioning you or any of your keywords. You can then also get email notifications so you can respond in a timely fashion. And of course, because it's integrated with the whole entire marketing platform of HubSpot, you can also start to really see the ROI of social marketing with visit to lead and lead to customer analytics and so much more.
Thank you so much, Leela. There's been so many great tips in there today for our audience. I'm sure they've found really helpful. For our audience listening, if you want to ask our presenters any questions, please tweet them with the hashtag Hubmasters, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So for now, I'm going to turn things over to Brian Lavery from Twitter, who is going to share some of the exciting developments from inside Twitter in recent months, so that you can understand how to get the best out of your Twitter experience to help drive business results.
So thanks very much, Lisa, and thanks, Leela, for everything you've shared so far. What we have on the screen now is the phrase supercharge your account. So I'm going to talk about promoted accounts, which is a Twitter advertising product. And I don't mean this to be a sales pitch, but there are a lot of capabilities out there that I think would be relevant to the topics we've been covering. We've had a lot of questions on the Hubmasters hashtag so far during the session, some of which I've been trying to respond to. I'll be responding to less now that I'm talking a bit more. But a lot of questions about targeting. And what Twitter's promoted products let you do is really fine-tune how your content is presented to Twitter users through advanced targeting options. So we're going to just briefly cover a snapshot of what that looks like here today. So Twitter promoted accounts quickly get your account in front of users who are likely to be interested in your business and who will share and amplify your message. So this enables you to take the great content and all the work that you're doing on Twitter and to get it in front of people who are very relevant to you but who don't follow you yet. You've probably seen this before. What it looks like is in this snapshot here on our web client, where you can see a promoted account from Amazon UK on the left-hand side in the Who to Follow box. Just recently, you'll probably notice, those of you who are really on the ball, that we've moved the Who to Follow box over to the right-hand side of the screen. So this screenshot is a couple of weeks out of date, but the presentation is the same. There is, at the top of that Who to Follow box, an account that Twitter believes will be of interest to you as a user, and it's flagged with the little promoted icon underneath. So that Twitter users know that Amazon is running this as part of a promoted campaign. It also shows up in search results, and that's a particularly powerful place for promoted accounts to be. Twitter search is quite different from other search facilities online. People who are searching for topics on Twitter are very engaged, and they have high intent to engage with the brands that they discover or with the content that they discover. So we do find a very high follow rates coming through promoted accounts presented in search as well. So what you can see here is two quick snapshots of promoted accounts appearing when someone has searched for financial advice. On the left-hand side in the web client, Merrill Lynch, and on the right-hand side on a mock-up of a mobile phone, someone using our Android or iPhone clients with E-Trade, the online stockbroking service. One new development that has been particularly powerful for smaller brands and smaller businesses on Twitter is promoted accounts in timeline. This only launched just over a month ago, I believe, and what this is essentially a new ad format for Twitter ads, which runs in the home timelines of Twitter users on both mobile devices and in the desktop client, along with the tweet. So it's not quite like the Amazon example that we looked at a moment ago, where just the username, Twitter handle, and their icon was presented, now you can add a tweet to it as well, and it appears in the home timeline of Twitter users who you target. So this allows you to give Twitter users a specific reason to follow you. In the example you see here, the barista bar can explain to coffee lovers what they will get by following its account. The tweet says, hey, if you love coffee, try our new lattes from now until January. Follow us for the latest updates and exclusive deals. One other thing to highlight here is you'll notice in this example, there's only one button below that tweet on the right-hand side there, which is the follow button. There's no favorite, reply, or retweet buttons here. So it really focuses the engagement that your target audiences will have on following you. Here's a best practice example from Street Hub, which is a UK retailer, in this case, encouraging users, Twitter users, to follow them for discounts, same-day delivery, and click and collect on the Taddy Divine brand of jewelry. They're targeting this at particular users who they think will be interested, and they have a couple of best practices to call out. First is including the word follow, so being very direct and saying, hey, this is what it's for, follow us. And then providing a clear reason to do so, saying what you'll get for by following. You'll get discounts, same-day delivery, etc. This is another example where offers and contests can be particularly compelling to Twitter users. So, as we mentioned earlier, that's the type of activity that works really well and is very engaging on Twitter. If you mention special offers, discounts, competitions in a promoted account campaign, that can be resonate very well with your target users. One thing not to do is to include hashtags and website addresses in the content here. So if you were to include hashtags and web addresses, you might find people clicking on links or clicking on hashtags and going away from the activity that you want them to take, which is actually following you. So just a quick example now. These are two quick snapshots of how this works and what are the targeting options that you have with a promoted accounts campaign. You can target Twitter users based on a couple of different criteria, but one of the really powerful ones that a lot of people don't know about is targeting usernames or @ handles, targeting @ usernames here. This allows you to target Twitter users that look like the followers of specific accounts. So you could target people who look like the followers of your competitors, of influencers who you may have discovered on Twitter, of key industry media that are relevant to you, or of events like conferences or trade shows that might be of interest. So in the example you can see here on the right-hand side, we've done this as if we were, say, an online sports retailer, an e-commerce shop in the UK. So we've targeted @ handles like, oops, sorry, we've jumped ahead by a slide there. There we go. We're targeting @ handles like Nike, Adidas, Puma, and JD Sports. Twitter will look at all the followers of Nike, Puma, Adidas, and JD Sports and figure out what interests them, what criteria tend to match all of those users who follow those brands, and will present your promoted account to users who match that criteria. There's likely to be some overlap. There will be Nike followers and Adidas followers who do see your promoted account, but we don't exclusively present it to those followers. Two best practices here. One is to use a significant number of usernames to broaden your reach and make sure that you get good value on a Twitter ads campaign. So at least 10 is best practice. And you can accomplish that by using the Expand Your Reach tool, which you can see there's a link to it at the bottom of the top screenshot here, and then the below window is what pops up when you click on it, where Twitter will suggest other usernames to make it easy for you. Quick case study of an organization that has used this very successfully is Clean Air in London. This is a UK NGO, a non-profit, that's fighting pollution and raising awareness around air pollution issues in the UK and in London in particular. They wanted to increase the awareness of their brand and grow their follower base and engagement on Twitter. They used promoted accounts to increase their audience, in particular with relevant influencers, and in particular in London. So you can set the criteria based on geography as well. In this case, they limited it to the London area. They doubled their followers, and they had a peak engagement rate of nearly 20%. That means, obviously, 1 in 5 Twitter users who saw their promoted account chose to follow them, which is a pretty phenomenal result. That's well above the average but one that we were really pleased to see for Clean Air London. And when they did include links in some of their promoted content, they had a threefold increase in their click-through rates on that web traffic. We have a quote there from Simon, who we've spoken to quite a bit at Clean Air London about how pleased they were with that campaign. And we see this work for all sorts of organizations, whether they're in B2B sectors, B2C, nonprofit, etc.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brian and Leela. That was really, really great insights for both myself, HubSpot, and our audience. So thank you for joining us today. We just have a few minutes left for some questions. We've been monitoring Hubmasters on Twitter, and we have a couple of questions. So the first one I think that we should answer, because it came in a few times, getting up to over 80,000 engaged Twitter followers just seems really daunting for small companies that don't necessarily have a social team. So in reality, Leela, how much time are you actually spending on a daily basis engaging people on Twitter and posting?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question, and it can vary. I think one Friday I once timed it, and I think I spent 4 hours or something responding to everybody. But I mean, as we've been saying throughout the call, it's not necessarily about numbers. I've been doing this for such a long time, and it's my industry. I need to have a large, amount of followers, whereas not everybody does, and it does take time to build up. And it's more about what you're actually saying rather than the amount of time and how effective you can be. And really do take the time to leverage the tools as well, because that saves a huge amount of time as well.
Okay, that actually leads me into my next question, which is what divide do you recommend people to spend time self-creating content that they'll publish on Twitter versus retweeting versus anything else that you can do to engage people? So how much time, or what's the percentage difference in self-created posts versus retweets?
Okay, well, for us, our strategy is probably about 80-20, but that's the way we want it to work. We actually don't do any paid traffic, so all our traffic is organic, and a lot of it comes from social media. So for us, we want to be creating the content. We want to become, the experts in our industry and, the thought leaders, and so for us, content plays a crucial role to it. But at the same time, we want to share other people's content too. So again, this boils down to the resources. Do you have the time and effort to be creating, a lot of content? And, we're seeing the rise of content curation tools now as well. So I think, again, and I'm sorry to kind of evade the answer a little bit, but the question rather, it really depends to what your objectives are and the resources that you have. It's much, much better with content to be consistent. So if you can only create one article a week, make sure you're consistent with that and do it once a week rather than having a very scattergun approach.
Okay, thank you. And so what are your recommendations for getting local followers and targeting people in a specific geographical area, or just getting really targeted? How do you find those people and get them to follow you?
Okay, so again, it's about, using the right tools, leveraging hashtags as well, and, looking at people's bios and doing research and finding out and talking to them. Lists as well, very, very useful. There's a lot of local lists and places like that. When people tend to have a service, for example, and it's a local service, they tend to be more targeted in their keywords that they're using. And again, the tools make a big difference and can help with that as well.
Two other things there that I'd suggest. I think those are great ideas, Leela. Lists, as you mentioned, can be really useful. Also think about if your business is focused on a particular local area, you probably know who some of the local influencers are. Could be local politicians, could be the local newspaper, local radio station, any place that people go for local information. That might be the sort of local influencer who you'd like to engage with. If you get them starting to retweet your content through some of the tactics that we've mentioned already, then you'll find you're reaching a bigger local audience. One other way you can do this is through, a promoted tweet or a promoted accounts campaign. that focuses on your region. Our geo-targeting with Twitter ads is improving all the time. We're not at postcode level in the UK, for example. We're at kind of large metro area and regional level, but that can be a helpful way to ensure that your followers are closer to home as well.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the webinar. This has been recorded, and we will be sending out the recording as well as the slides tomorrow. But if you do have more questions, and if we didn't get to your question on here, please do continue asking those on Twitter with the hashtag Hubmasters, and we'll try and get to respond to all of them. So thanks again to everybody for joining, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Lisa.